Hello, Boulder Universal families. We are so excited to have you here at our elementary school. Wanted to give you a week at a glance video for kind of how things work logistically with Schoology and the Florida virtual content. The first thing to note is that while Schoology does have its own independent website, it is important to log into Schoology through the MyVVSD single sign-on. The reason for that is that it does create opportunity for you to access all the resources, and if you log in directly through Schoology, you end up losing some of the features. So you do need to go ahead and log in through Schoology. If you're having any issues, your teacher will have shared a troubleshooting guide for you to be able to check on changing up a few things or trying a few things before reaching out. However, if you do continue to have issues, please connect with us and IT and we'll help you get that sorted. Once you are logged into the class, you'll see some kind of getting started information, and that will have kind of an overview with some how do I videos, as well as the key course information for the content. It will be important in one of the courses to go through all of these. However, once you have done that, you can go into the course specifics for each class and just click on that. Please note that when it comes to talking about pacing, we do have our own BVSD pacing guide, and you will see the due dates listed on the weekly folders, so it's important to always pay attention. And we do follow those due dates for attendance, so it's important that you're submitting assignments. When you click in, you'll also see the student completion settings for what needs to be completed, and we get a glance page that will kind of break down how to get the content done for the week. Do note that when you have completed an assignment, it will give you this green check mark, but at times there can be glitches with the student progress and student completion settings. So if you don't see it for the full week, note that that might just be a glitch on Schoology's behalf here, but that as long as you have gone in and done all of the assignments within the weekly folder, we'll see it on our end and you'll be good to go. My Week at a Glance page is a great place, and every instructor has something similar. The Week at a Glance page is a great place to start because it will have a breakdown of the office hours and the enrichment times that are happening, as well as how to work through the content and the assignments to make sure you get them all done by that deadline. Another thing that's important to do every morning is to check your messages from your instructor to see if they've given you any important updates and if they've emailed anything out about the day or the content that you're going to be working through that week. So that's an important thing to check every day. Once you have looked at your week at a glance and reviewed anything that's coming up that week, any thing that you need to know about parent-teacher conferences, or if there was a snow day, things like that, you'll usually find that here. And then that's when you begin to work through the curriculum. So this little ruler page is where you actually begin to see all the pages of the content. And what's really helpful is at the beginning of the day to kind of do, or even at the beginning of a week, to kind of do a click through and find the practice pages and the materials you might need. For language arts and math, you can request the materials to be printed. For science and social studies, we do encourage you with practice pages that while you can print them off and work on them directly on the worksheet, you can also do the responses for those assignments in your interactive journal. The content references something called an interactive journal. Really, it's just a composition notebook where you sometimes are writing things in that they're asking you to complete, or it's a place where you could complete practice pages directly into that journal rather than printing materials out. A lot of times those practice pages are also going to have the materials you need for an activity. For instance, click into this science content. I see that I have 10 pages of content to work through, and I can click through looking for the practice pages and the final assignment that will be submitted. So if I get through and I find here that I've got a practice page called Magnets in Action, this will tell me the things that I need beforehand to complete that practice page. So that's a good example for a class like science. Another thing you might notice is that a practice page within math might be just that. It's one page to practice the questions, and it's not necessarily the thing that is submitted at the end. A lot of times you'll see that it's this last page that tells you what you will actually need to submit, along with a rubric for how that will be graded. So one thing to note about the practice pages is that we often encourage you to complete 2/3 of that, showing that you have mastery of the standard. because it's not something that you're going to submit, if you see that you are understanding the concepts, able to answer all the questions, maybe even you and your child talk through the questions rather than write them all out. Maybe you want your child to have the extra writing practice, so they go ahead and fill it out. All of those are viable options with the practice pages. And then you would move on. And so use them as that. Use them as an extension of learning. Use them as a way to show mastery of a standard. And don't feel like you have to fill out every page to fidelity. When you get to that last page, it's where you're going to go ahead and have that final assignment that would be submitted to an instructor. It is helpful to have that one actually printed off at that point to submit, though we understand that for science and social studies, you may decide to go ahead and enter it into a journal if printing becomes an obstacle. But yes, the main thing is that we can see on this final page, they understand the standards that are being assessed. And beyond that, the practice page is for you and your child to kind of do a dance with, to figure out how much do we need to do of this, how much is great practice for things like handwriting, and then when can we move on if we show that we know what the page is asking us to do. Same thing for the interactive journal. You can use that as a way to kind of apply some of the learning, but then continue to move on. The one caveat is that in language arts, when you do get into the language arts courses, do note that oftentimes you are beginning parts of a writing assignment within the content that you will finish later. So a lot of times you'll see that even if you're taking a quiz for that particular lesson for that day, you have maybe started something like the sandwich paragraph graphic organizer that you need to keep to continue to work on. So those would be things that would be embedded within the content and that your child would build upon over time until they complete and submit a final portion of that writing or the graphic organizer later on in a different lesson. So that's something that builds, where those practice pages are actually working towards a final submitted assignment. So hopefully that clarifies kind of how to use the practice pages, the interactive journals, where to find the materials that will actually be due, and then also considering, how to kind of dance with that content so that you're not feeling completely overwhelmed. One thing to note about quizzes is that when you see a quiz, it will be this little puzzle piece. Discussion boards look like little comic book chat boxes or chat bubbles, and then assignments that are submitted where it's a scanned page will look like a little page icon right here. So with quizzes, those are embedded within the curriculum, and those are an extension of learning. So feel free to read those questions and answers with your child across subject areas. Maybe as they're answering, you can reflect after you submit the quiz and kind of talk about what they learned, what they got wrong, and they do have 2 attempts at a quiz. So that is part of the learning process. That being said, once we get down to a module assessment, for language arts in the upper grades, we're asking that students read those on their own because we are assessing reading standards. And so you see here, these ones are a little bit different. They're called the module assessment. And you will have a review page that will help your child get prepped for that. Again, for language arts, we're asking that they read through that. For math, science, and social studies, we're okay with you reading the questions and the responses, but this is an opportunity for your child to show what they know and what they learned completely independently. So at this point, you're not encouraging them to answer the correct way. You're not fixing incorrect answers or talking through it once we get to the module assessment. We often use these for report cards to say, okay, completely independently, does a child understand the standards? And if the parent is helping, we don't get that fidelity of understanding what the child can do on their own. So 2 attempts and 2 times at a quiz, 1 attempt at a module assessment, and much less support here. Teachers will reach out to you kind of with their expectations beyond that for what that can look like at different grade levels. So that's an important thing to note. When you do go in to submit assignments here for like these pages where it's actually a scanned document, like you've looked through the curriculum, you've done a couple of the practice pages partway through, you've moved on to the final part, and this is what's actually going to be submitted at this point. When you click into it, you'll see an option here to submit. And once you do that, there are several different ways to do that, which there will be another separate video on how to do that. You will see that you actually have this little blue page that it has been submitted. And then you're going to check your grade book on a regular basis to kind of get feedback from your instructor. So this is where you will find where they have provided some insight on either what to fix before a deadline or what to work on the next time. So be checking that every single day. Another way, again, to make sure that you've completed assignments and have everything submitted for the week, as I mentioned, is checking those completion settings and those green boxes for things, or for those green check marks for things like quizzes and the discussion boards, whatever you might find within the week. When you go into complete discussion boards, do note that there are a few different ways to fill those out, and depending on the instructor directions, you're going to want to do it however they are hoping to have you finish it. So you can often type comments in here, attach outside files or links, and then sometimes we'll even have you do an audio or video recording directly into the discussion board. So note that that's a way that you might complete those types of assignments. When you need help, be sure to check for that contact page that you have in each class from your instructor. Also bop into those office hours with a guardian, and a child can stop by into office hours and ask questions about the content and the curriculum. And also there's always going to be the opportunity to message through Schoology, send an email, give a phone call, all of those good things. So that's important ways to know that you can connect with your teacher if you are needing support. So quick overview, you're going to log in through the single sign-on portal. You're going to look at your week at a glance to make sure you know what is due that week, anything about days off, things that you need to be aware of for the week. Then you are going to move through every page of the content, completing practice pages with the understanding that you are trying to show mastery of a standard, and then you're able to move on. And those don't necessarily have to be printed. They can be done within that interactive journal. From there, you will submit what you see is actually due, which is often shown on that final page of an assignment. And you're going to retain anything for language arts that's going to be built upon. So if they start something for a longer writing assignment, you're going to keep and maintain that. When you take quizzes, you can do that as an extension of learning. When we do things like iReady, which will be done synchronously, or final module exams, we're going to look for that more independent type of experience. And also note that within language arts and math, there might be assignments connected to some practice that we want students to do virtually as well. So again, you're going to look at the week at a glance, and if there's a page for that here for something like iReady 20 minutes a day, your child will go ahead and complete that, and then they'll have a way to submit and show that they have done that work for the week. And you're looking to get all of those completed before that deadline for attendance so that we can say, yes, they attended this week and got all of their materials submitted and done. And from that, the next week and even each day, you're going to check the gradebook for feedback and reach out whenever you need help. So hopefully that's a kind of a broad overview of how to kind of begin navigating the content, knowing these different icons, that this is where the content is housed, practice pages, you find your materials and your resources, and then these icons are where you begin to submit things, and that's showing that attendance and completion for the week. So hopefully that's a good overview, and you're kind of feeling set up to get started, and we're going to always be here to help you every step along the way.